goal of this podcast is help you break in and thrive in advertising. We do that every week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. And welcome back to ADjunct, the series where we interview the best ad educators across the world. So we know that universities cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So this is our little effort to give you the best advice at zero cost. Today we have an outstanding individual. Willie Baronet is a Stan Richards Professor in Creative Advertising at the Temerlin Institute of Advertising at Southern Methodist University over in Dallas, Texas. Willie loves his job so much, he actually lives in a dorm on SMU's campus, where he also serves as a faculty in residence, where he hosts meet and greets and dinners with students directly. He also works with Mark Allen. Mark Allen, who we had on the ADjunct series a few months back, and they both work together to guide students through the creative track within Temerlin. Here are some of the classes Willie teaches: Intro to Creativity, Word and Image, Concepting, Portfolio, Advanced Portfolio, Visualization and Information, Logo and Trademark Design, Ad Campaigns, Creativity as Problem Solving. So Willie Baronet is the former owner and creative director of Group Baronet, which is now Mason Baronet. And his advertising and design work has been featured in pretty much everything: the Communication Arts, Graphis, AIGA, Graphic Design Annual, New York Art Directors Annual, The One Show, Print Casebooks, the list goes on. He's really good. But in addition to talking about breaking into advertising, Temerlin, and his advice, we break down the importance of finding fulfilling work and a meaning in life, some purpose, some philosophy, if you will. Baronet has been buying and collecting homeless signs, yes, homeless signs, since 1993 as a part of a long-term art project titled We Are All Homeless. In 2014, he began a 31-day cross-country trip to buy signs in 24 cities, which was the subject of the documentary Signs of Humanity, which premiered at the Dallas International Film Festival and has been accepted into 7 additional festivals. He's done exhibits featuring these signs across the U.S. and in the UK. It's been featured in international and local media. So what he does for his ad students is incredible. What he does with We Are All Homeless is incredible. This episode is incredible. He is incredible, and I'm just so excited for you all to listen. So tune in, and also you might want to connect with Willie, which you should. We have all those links to his work and to his documentary in the show notes. Let's get on with the show now. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Willie Baronet, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. That flows really nicely.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Where are you at? Let our audience know where you're tuning in from.
I am a faculty in residence at the college where I teach in Dallas, Texas. So I'm literally on the campus of SMU right now in my apartment.
So you're faculty in residence at Southern Methodist University. So you're living in a dorm is what I'm getting from that. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and our apartment is 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. It's a little nicer than most of the other dorm rooms.
Right. But that's nice, and we've talked before. I'm sure that's a nice little feature. It's a beautiful campus. I've never been. I want to make a visit out there, and that's Dallas, if I've done my homework correctly and know anything about anything. It's SMU is in Dallas.
It is. It's a awful place to be right now, just because the temperatures have been over 100 for many, many days,
Yeah.
and that's really, there's one bad season to be in Dallas, and that's it.
How many months does that last? Like that extreme hot?
2.5 sometimes.
Okay. Hey, I'm from Chicago, so I don't want to hear it. It was funny. I was connecting with a professor, talked to somebody, and I forgot who it was. Also Texas, I believe. He was saying he took a vacation to escape the heat. I was like, I've never heard anybody say that in the Midwest. So I guess that when it is 100 plus degrees, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, lots of people leave Dallas in the summer.
So we're here to talk about SMU and yourself and advertising, and you've got a really cool project that you've been doing for numerous amount of years. So we'll get into that as well. I'll tease that out now, but let's start with what you're doing at SMU, the Temerlin Advertising Institute. Is that a part of the Meadows School of Arts over in SMU? Do I have that correct?
That is correct.
And I also interviewed Mark Allen, who is also a part of the program. That was months ago. He did a great job explaining the program, but I want to get your take on it. But yes, so Temerlin Advertising Institute, you're Stan Richards professor in creative advertising. So what do you do there? What do you teach? What does that mean? Faculty and residents, give us the rundown on what your job is full time right now.
Sure. And I'm really excited to teach with Mark. I've known Mark for many, many years, and he and I and one other professor comprise the full-time faculty that is on the creative track. Our program has 3 tracks, so students apply to and get accepted in either the creative track, strategic brand management, or digital media. And I and Mark both teach in the creative section of that. Our program is an undergraduate program, and a lot of our students, for the creative track students, we're really focused on building portfolios. We have a graphic design minor, and our third professor, Cheryl Mendenhall, heads up the graphic design program, but all 3 of us teach classes in design as well.
Okay, so we break this down. So you major in advertising. You're in the Temerlin School that's within the Meadows School of Arts, and you can choose. I know I like advertising, and I'm assuming that it takes maybe a year or so for people to realize what track or they want to do advertising, because we know that for the most part, advertising is a transfer in major. Or like at least that's how it was at Illinois. I think it was like 2/3 the amount of majors in advertising transferred in later on. So regardless, it might take them a year or so to decide this. And then they got 3 tracks. The track that you and Mark and Cheryl oversee, teach, run is the creative track. So creative portfolios, development, and developing those portfolios. I like how you guys have that graphic design option as well. Super, super important. And there's a difference. We can talk about that. What are the other 2 again? So you got brand management, which sounds to me account, and the other one's strategy.
Digital media strategy. So those are folks that might have an interest in media planning, and or they may just be interested in strategy or social media. And they cover lots of stuff that, as you know, is a very shifting landscape right now. And to your other point, the students typically take some survey classes. I teach a large class called Intro to Creativity. There's also classes Intro to Advertising and Digital Media Landscapes. And so students often will take one or more of those survey classes, and that's how they decide which track they're interested in.
Right. You got to have a good foundation.
Agreed.
Before you can specialize. And speaking of specialization, let's say I do want to go down the creative track. So at what point do I say, okay, my name's Gino. I'm in the creative track at Temerlin. I'm living in Dallas and having a great time escaping the hot weather, the best I can. And I know I want to be an art director. as opposed to a copywriter. So where do I specialize? Is this a cohort system? Are there classes for art directors that are different from copywriters or designers?
For the most part, those are shared portfolio classes, and art directors and writers often team up to work
Good.
in pairs. And it is very much like the real world. And as you know, in the real world, a lot of art directors write headlines sometimes, and a lot of copywriters come up with amazing visual ideas. And our students are no different. There are copywriting classes, there are other art kind of electives, etc. But I would say that the bulk of our students do the bulk of their portfolio work in classes that they're thrown together with other writers. And I will also say there are students who end up getting out of our program and they really want to be comedy writers, or they want to be they want to do something else that's creative, but this was the best way for them to get some training in idea development. And we encourage that too. As you know, the industry is, man, there's a zillion ways to make a living out there. And there are new jobs getting added all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's focus in on those listening that they do know they want to go to an ad agency or brand marketing side, just to clarify. But I think that's great that you're training these creative professionals in all endeavors, that they can go off and do something they're passionate about, because you're equipping them with how to think, which is super, super important. And also that structure, and you're getting those campaign classes, or whatever, I don't know what you're calling them, portfolio classes, where they're getting, I like the term shots on goals at briefs, at real projects, or at spec work, to build up that core portfolio. Correct?
Right, exactly. And we have a class, their first portfolio class is called Concepting. Then they have a class called Portfolio. Then they have Advanced Portfolio, then Advanced Portfolio 2. There are campaigns classes as well, and it's possible for them to do some work in the graphic design electives as well. So it's not uncommon for our art director types to end up with design projects right alongside campaigns.
So is this Temerlin program time bound? Like, is it a 2-year program? Do you enroll as a
It's a 4-year program, but you don't enroll until you've taken, as I mentioned, one of those survey classes. So typically they're either enrolling as a second semester freshman or a sophomore. And then they spend the rest of their time fleshing out the rest of the major.
I love it. I love that.
It's
Now there's very few schools, and you have to remember, I've studied advertising. I'm getting a master's in advertising right now. I've talked to 15 to 20 different university lecturers, professors, adjuncts on this show. And there's very few programs that have these distinguished track programs. And I love it, because you get to specialize. Now, I probably wouldn't be cut out. I probably wouldn't get into the creative portion.
okay.
Is there an application base? Is it like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, there's an application, and each of the students has to rank the track that they want to be in. And the creative track in particular, we've got an additional application part where they've got to make something. We give them a very weird open-ended prompt, and they have to make something in response to that prompt.
Can you do that for me right now live? Can we just I just want to get some validation that I could be in a creative program. Let's run it right now. What would be a question you would ask?
So one of our past prompts was, what else you got? And so we had people submit videos. We had people make multi-page booklets. We had people
multi-page booklets.
Oh, you wouldn't
believe. I don't want to ever read a booklet.
Well, that's a point that they ought to be keeping in mind, because it needs to hold our attention too. We do tell them we don't want it to take us longer than 2 minutes to digest whatever it is you give us.
you have, I want to give everybody some insight right now. I'm just was reading some emails. Every email that I draft out to all agency, it's internal all agency email. My managing director goes, make it shorter. It's already short. It's less than like a minute read. Shorter, 2 sentences. And that's like how much attention people have. It's literally 2 sentences. Every email you write in the industry world is so short. So
Brevity is a virtue.
yeah, so a booklet that now you have to admire the craft and the passion.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes they literally will make three-dimensional things that you pull and it opens up. I mean, the creativity is often quite apparent in these applications, and we usually get way more than we can accept. And so we go through those and we hash it out and figure out who's going to be in our next cohort.
I love it. I love it. I mean, you just don't have a million students. You don't. It's not a Big Ten school, right? I mean,
No, but we only have 15 people that we accept on the creative track every semester, every year for the cohort, and we'll usually get 3 times that many applying.
right. So you got to narrow it down. That makes sense. And why do you keep it intentionally 15, 20 people?
Really, because of the size of the portfolio classes and critique size.
And timing, right? Like if you're putting all this thought as a teacher, as a lecturer, as a professor, you need to make sure it takes a lot of time to refine these ideas. You have to sit with each one. It's a hard damn job.
Way more time out of class than we do in class, as you
Right.
probably know, just refining their campaigns and, you know, the reworking, critiquing. It's an all the time thing.
And that you so much all the time thing, Willie. You live in the dorm with them.
That's true.
They knock on your door
No,
after a couple drinks,
no.
and they go, Willie, I got a new idea. I need to run it by you. And your
No.
job as a faculty and residence, you have to open the door, right?
What's more likely is they're texting or emailing at
All hours.
all hours, and whether or not my phone's on is my fault. If I'm listening to their texts that late, then that's my problem.
Well, everybody, there's another tip right here. There's something called schedule send on emails. Schedule send it. If you're up at 3 a.m. and hey, if that's your creative hour, whatever you're doing, if that's when you get inspiration, you got to send something to Willie. You don't want to lose the idea. Hit the schedule send button for 8 a.m. And
well, I tell them that's fine. Send it whenever you want. I will look at. I'm an early.
You're just going to look at it when you're ready to go.
I'm going to look at it when I wake up. Yeah,
that's good. That shows that that says a lot about you. That's great.
I've been around the block, Gino. You know, I ran an agency for 15 years.
Let's get into that.
Well, I've had to learn how to set boundaries, or I'd be going nuts.
Mm-hmm. What else do we want to talk about this advertising program that you guys are running? I know Mark Allen, once again, I want to give a shout out to Mark because it was a great episode and we got pretty granular about the different tracks. So we got into the creative program. You can choose art direction, copywriting, and then design. Is that correct?
Yes, or some combination. And there are students who literally are good at all three.
Send those students my way for the Havas internship. Because that's very rare to see everybody, somebody good at all three parts of it. Savants, I don't know if that's an appropriate term, but.
Well, those are typically students that I would say are really strong conceptually, and they may be stronger at art direction or design. They may have a strength, but the idea, if they can come up with a strong idea, no matter the problem, that's, to me, those are the students I wish I would have hired back in the day.
Yes. But I think for students out there, like, don't get too stressed, right? Like, when we're hiring people, we want to see strengths in craft and concepting. That's different if your craft as an art director is to make great visual product and put it to a paper and layout or visuals. For writers, strong headlines and strong copy. Just focus on those fundamentals really, really well in whatever discipline that you pick out, and you'll get hired. And you can prove that in your portfolio.
Exactly.
So don't worry about all the different facets of it. And really, it also goes to your partner, right? Because you have this cohort system. So Willie, can you clarify real quick? So this cohort of 15, 20 kids that you select every year, do they travel the rest of their college career with the same cohort?
They do. There are some exceptions to that. Study abroad can get in the way sometimes. Some students have multiple majors and other minors, and so they're navigating other things as well. But for the most part, they start in a cohort and they go through that portfolio schedule that I mentioned earlier together. And a lot of them will graduate at the same time. If they got in as freshmen, they may have an extra 2 semesters and take advanced portfolio 2 more times.
That's the beauty of knowing what you want early.
Yes, and getting in early, because we have a fair amount of students who apply as freshmen, don't get in, and they apply again as sophomores and get in. So,
but even a word of advice to those people that they know they want to do this in their freshman year, they don't get in, don't give up, obviously, because you're young and you're going up against people with a year more experience. That just gives you more time to learn and create on the side. And you could do award shows, you could do the Crowbar Awards ad, but don't give up.
No, and I tell a lot of students, even if they don't get in the program, some of them will ask me if I'll do directed studies with them, and we'll spend a one-on-one semester, because I tell all of them advertising is filled with misfits from every corner of every college. It is literally people that really didn't fit somewhere else often fit in advertising. And that for me is something I want students to know. I hired a person early on in our agency who was an aspiring art director. She never went to college and never took a single class in design or art direction. She made her portfolio by hand on her own because she figured out after she graduated, that's what she wanted to do. 9 years later, she became our creative director.
There you go. It's true. If you have the work ethic, and we talk about Temerlin and we talk about these amazing ad programs, we talk about portfolio schools too. Now, I would argue, Willie, and you tell me, I think what we're seeing in the industry, and if you look at the damn portfolios that are getting hired, the caliber is just so high, and demand for that caliber, just the standard goes through the roof every single year.
And I'm proud. Yeah, I don't think so either. And I'm proud to say our portfolios compete with Art Center, Creative Circus, Miami Ad School, all the portfolio schools out there.
Well, you knocked out Creative Circus. It's gone now. So you guys must be doing, it's gone.
I didn't know it was gone.
So is Chicago Portfolio School. Gone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Nobody, how are you going to tell your parents? I don't know if you're listening, if you rely on, most of the time people pay for their own portfolio school. If they decide their senior year of college and they're trying to get into jobs, they don't have a good enough portfolio. Most of the time they have to fund it themselves. So how are you going to ask your parents, hey, mom, dad, I just spent a decent amount of money at an undergraduate institution, got my degree. Now I need to go back to a 2-year program, spend another 40, 50K. They're going to ask, well, son or daughter, are you at least getting a master's degree? And they go, nope, just a portfolio. And then they go, what's a portfolio?
Oh yeah, I've had this discussion. I'm guilty of causing lots of students to change their majors, which I'm happy to do.
If I'm a parent, I'd be like, well, you can change your major undergrad as long as you're going to get a job eventually and you're doing what you love, but you're going to have some debt. You got to pay that thing off.
Yeah.
So I don't care what you study, but you got to be ready. So if you're Willie, it sounds like you're getting these students ready for a job. That your job is to get students jobs.
Exactly. I mean, that's our focus. We, I don't know if Mark shared this with you, but every spring we take our juniors and seniors to New York and we tour the biggest, best ad agencies on the planet. And we let them see firsthand what they're in for. And they often are making connections there that lead to internships or jobs. So, yeah.
And you if you're in New York, I have all the connects for Havas New York and some other companies. Get them to Chicago too. Chicago's great. Great
Oh,
ad market.
we have some in Chicago too.
We'll get you, if you guys want to come tour, if you talk to me on the side, I'll set you up at all the big agencies. I'm sure you have a million connections as well, so you might not even need it. But that is great. I think that's super important. I want to talk about you and how you got into all this advertising and then decided to teach one day. We talked offline and just had a really outstanding discussion. So let's talk about your break-in story. At one point, were you a young Willie? When did you say to yourself, I want to make ads for a living in life?
So I'm going to condense this as much as I can, but I was, as a kid, I loved to draw. That was something that I just did and never took an art class in elementary school or high school. I just drew. That was just something I liked to do. When I started in college, I started in majoring in pre-law, thinking I was going to be a lawyer.
Hmm.
I switched my major a couple of semesters later to math, mainly because I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I had this math professor who really got me all jacked up about math theory. I did that for a couple of semesters.
That professor deserves an award.
Agreed. He was amazing. I still think of him to this day. It wasn't until later, though, I think it occurred to me, what the hell am I going to do for a living while I'm taking calculus 2? Do I really want to do this for a living? And I was flipping through a course catalog. Back then they were on paper. And I saw advertising design. I had never taken an art class and changed my major once again. And I can tell you from that first class, my first ever drawing class, my first ever advertising class, it was like the clouds parted and I knew I was in the right place and never looked back.
How do you go from pre-law to math? Advertise that alone is, we can dissect that for a couple hours right there. But that's interesting. So but you knew you loved drawing growing up, so there was some sort of connection there.
Yeah, the thing that I figured out, so I didn't really know much about the advertising industry, but very quickly realized this is a place that's good for people with short attention spans. It's a place good for people who like to be a smartass.
Yep.
And it's good for people who like to come up with clever ideas. And I felt like those were all things that fit for me. So, yeah, I loved it right away. Right away, first class, I knew this was it.
And what was your first job? How'd you break in?
So I was in school in Lafayette, Louisiana, in what is now UL, University of Louisiana at Lafayette. We did not have a huge program. I was in a very small class with some other students that it was a pretty rough to stay in the program. Our professor was really good at weeding out people. I think my first class had 40 people in it and 8 of us graduated.
Do you teach the same way?
Do
you weed
I
people
think
out?
we're a little bit harder in the getting in part, but yes, I think the bar, I was taught early about the bar being set really high. And because of that, and at that time in a little podunk school in South Louisiana, he would take us every year to Houston and Dallas on field trips. And we would come and look at the agencies and the big design firms here. And that started to open my eyes to a bigger, broader world. I worked at an agency in Lafayette, Louisiana, right out of school.
What role?
I was an art director, a junior art director, and loved it, but realized pretty quickly that if I was going to grow, I needed to be in a bigger market. And I had a couple of friends who had moved to Dallas, and they were calling me saying, dude, get your portfolio and get your ass to Dallas. And so I did. And luckily, I came, interviewed with a ton of places, got a job at an agency called All Day and Associates. And I'm going to share this just because it's really current, but Jack Alday, who hired me, passed away last week. And
Sorry to hear that.
literally, he and I have been friends for 40 years. I'll always think of him as a mentor and just an amazing guy. And even though I didn't stay at his agency for long, he and I had breakfast this past May. So,
Mhm.
it's one of those kinds of deals. But
What would you say is some of those big things he taught you? And I guess that being your first larger agency experience or big market, what resonates with you that you can tell our listeners today that still hold true?
a couple of things. So he was an account guy. So I took this job as art director, and I literally at the beginning did not have a creative director to work for. So I was thrust into way more responsibility than I was qualified for. What Jack taught me is to think. He was willing to go sell my craziest ideas, and I watched him do that. He was also willing to get clients to spend money on things that they maybe wouldn't have if he didn't convince them that, hey, this is going to work. And but I would really say my second job, I got to work at a really high profile creative firm called Sullivan Perkins. And it was led by a really strong copywriter, really strong designer at the time. And that felt like grad school for me. That's where I learned how to polish my craft. And I learned how to compete with I mean, everybody that worked there was really strong creatively. So it was a really cool experience to up my game. And I was there for 4 years. So that was really where I honed a lot of my skills.
Still around. I'm on the website right now.
Oh, yeah. They've been around a long time. I was their second employee.
Oh,
That's how far back that goes.
yeah. I'm just looking through the website. So you said that was like your grad school. That was like the
That was
higher
like my
profile.
first grad school. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. So art director, you remained in that track.
I stayed in that role. I was moved up as to senior designer, and I was doing I had a lot more responsibility by the time I left. But when I left there, it was to take a job as a creative director at another small ad agency here in Dallas. And that was the last job I had before starting my own company back in 1992.
And we'll get into that before this question. I'm curious of the different ad markets, Chicago, LA, New York, Minneapolis, Portland, Richmond, Virginia is a great ad city. What's the characteristic, I guess, of the ad scene either today or historically for Dallas? What type of work, what type of clients are going to Dallas? What's the city vibe like for advertising?
Dallas exists because of business. Dallas doesn't isn't on the coast. There's no beaches, there's no mountain range. There is no reason for Dallas to exist other than the fact that it's close to Fort Worth, which exists because of the cattle drives in the Old West a long time ago. And Dallas Fort Worth as a metroplex is really a place where businesses come. It is the cost of living's good. It is a city built around a can-do spirit. There is a vibe in Dallas to me that is we can get shit done here,
I
and
love
I
that.
think that is. I mean, that is why Dallas exists. And so a lot of the ad agencies, I think, were built. I will have to say that, I mentioned my title as a Stan Richards Professor in Creative Advertising. Stan Richards, who started the Richards Group back in the 70s and who left just a couple or 3 years ago, he is, I mean, he's really responsible for a lot of the creative talent that grew up here in Dallas. And he had a design firm, he had an ad agency. He was, for a while, the Richards Group was the largest independently owned ad agency in the world and was that for many, many years.
Mhm.
And
I gotta get him on this pod. He's still alive, right?
he is 89, 90. He's been around a long time. And so I'm honored to have his name in my title. And I would say that one of the things that Dallas owes to him is just the design in the 80s and 90s in Dallas was some of the best being done in the United States. A lot of it came from influence from Pushpin back in New York, back in the 60s. The Milton Glaser, Seymour Quast, all those guys.
Yeah.
And so
Is that the Bob
Dallas,
Dylan poster guy?
yes, exactly. Who passed away. He's also the guy who came up with I Heart New York, which is one of the most ripped off
Milton.
pieces of graphic design in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say a lot of our creativity, both art direction and design,
He's your
came
Leo
from.
Burnett.
Say again?
He's like the Leo Burnett.
He's exactly
for
the Leo
Dallas.
Burnett. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I mean, when I think of David Ogilvy, Bill Bernbach, all the
Bernbach,
big
Ogilvy.
greats,
Yeah.
he
He's
is. He was the Dallas guy like that.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, homework assignment for everybody, and I don't. We're talking about you, Willie, but homework assignment. We'll leave a light on for you campaign. There's a really good podcast tagline by Tim Nudd, who's been on this show. He was at Muse by Cleo. He has a better podcast than me. It's no longer running, but he would break down the best campaigns of all time. You got your Dos Equis man. You got. And there's a lot, but the one that he breaks down is from the Richards Group. It's Motel 6. We'll leave a light on for you with the name of the. Don't tell me, Todd Bodette.
Yeah,
Tom Bodette.
Tom Bodette. Yeah, great comedy voice talent. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that explains your title. Yeah, and Richards Group, TRG, rebranded to. I'm not sure what they're still up to, what they're up to now. I know he left, but everybody can do their own research. But back to you. When did you start your own agency?
1992. And
why?
I had worked, as I mentioned, for a couple of places, was working at as a creative director at a small agency run by people that I don't think did a lot of things great. And so I was getting antsy and met a guy, and we talked and decided to start a little company. It was really a creative boutique when we started it. And it grew into being an ad agency. He left after about 5 years, and I ran the company for 15 years total and sold it in 2006.
Nice. A good run there.
It was one of the best, most amazing experiences of my life, building a company, which I was not trained for, honestly. I didn't know how to run a business, so I had to learn everything by the seat of my pants and just by paying attention.
Yeah, that's hard work. There's some listeners that are students right now that have already planned out that they want to open up their own agency. So we'll save that for them to connect with you and advice. And I'm sure you've learned a lot, and you know some people that can help with the consulting of it. I myself, this is a business, breaking and entering as a media company. I need some damn help as well. So we'll definitely talk on the side. But who are some of your big clients? I guess like some work you're proud of. Let's talk high level about your agency time.
So because of our size, we were never bigger than, I think 18 people was the largest we ever were.
Hey, that's a lot of people. That's a lot. Those are humans that feed mouths that are.
Oh yeah.
That's a huge thing. Full-time employees, are we talking? Are these?
Yeah. Full-time employees. And, eventually we expanded to where we had account people, we had account planners. So it was a full-fledged agency at the time that I sold it. We had clients like the Dallas Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Dallas County Community Colleges. We had some national clients occasionally. We had some furniture clients, as that was one of the niches we had work in. All Steel was a client. We did work for Motorola, particularly their semiconductor division, Samsung. So we would occasionally do national projects, or at least projects for national brands. But our big, steady clients were often clients that were regional or based here. And the Dallas Convention and Visitors Bureau.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that was amazing.
That sounds like a lot of activations, a lot of events, and a lot of fun ideas can come from that.
Well, it was a lot like trying to figure out how to brand this city, which, as I said earlier, is here strictly because of this spirit. And there's a tourism division. So we were doing work to attract people in Germany and Switzerland. Why would they want to come to Dallas? And then there was the convention side of the business, which how do we convince large organizations to choose Dallas instead of Las Vegas, New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago, New York?
If you can get, I know Havas Chicago right now, we have Choose Chicago as a client. This podcast is independent, but what I bring that up is because you can get so many cool brand activations, campaigns, ideas for any tourism, even Indiana.
Right.
That's the thing. There's a thing. And, Pure Michigan is something that we see in the Midwest a lot. They do a great job that's targeted to us folks in the city in Chicago. But if you can get on any of these tourism clients, you can do some really, really interesting stuff. Especially, it only makes sense that the city of Dallas is going to work with a local agency because you understand, you live there, you've been there. Why would they hire somebody in California to run tourism for Dallas?
So I had worked for them at a previous agency, so I had a relationship with a couple of the VPs there. Did
you steal them over?
We stole a few things. Yeah. But I'm going to say this because it's one of the things I'm really proud about. Their account was not huge, but when they did an RFP to change and have a new agency of record, we had to go and pitch it again.
Right.
And one of the agencies pitching against us was the Richards Group. So for us, it was going to be a huge client. For them,
yeah,
it was going to be a small client, and we won that business. And I'm to this day really proud of the pitch we did, and also the way that we presented ourselves to convince them that we were the right choice. And we had that client for 13 years, I think.
And you kept them. That gave me some chills there, Willie. That's really interesting stuff, and I'm really proud of that for you. Yeah, I mean, it just shows that you cared, and sometimes it's like the old Avis ad, right?
Right. We try harder.
We try harder. Avis is number 2, but yeah, you were scrappier. You had better ideas at the time. You cared more. So why wouldn't they pick that shop?
Well, we were able to say, look, you're going to get the people in this room right now. You're not getting some big pitch team you're never going to see again.
Did you watch Nike Air, that movie?
I did.
It's just like how Nike was going up against Adidas, and he was I forgot that guy's name. He was like, Mrs. Jordan, when you get into the room with Adidas, ask them who's running the show, and they'll all give you different ideas. They'll all give you different answers of who's running the show at Adidas. Like, their management was all over the place.
Yeah, that was a great movie. That's a whole nother thing. I have a huge Jordan Nike thing. I'm a big fan from way back. I own the first pair. I've been a Jordan lover ever since.
I missed out on that. I was just alive, born for the rage.
I was new to Dallas at that time, man, and I was playing basketball with a bunch of other creatives early in the morning before work. And I remember the first pair of Air Jordans.
I'll tell you what, to be at Wyden at that time, that must have been insane.
And now to have some of our students working for Wyden in Portland and in New York, I mean, it's amazing.
It's still great work.
I know.
Now I want to wrap this up, Willie, and I think how I will segue this, staying sharp and creative in advertising. For me, I have this podcast, the side hustle. We see students doing poetry, photography, some way, because once you get in the industry, sometimes, the work is not as fulfilling. Sometimes you do work for a Wyden right away, and you do have that creative fulfillment. Sometimes I've talked to people at Wyden that don't have it because you have to start somewhere. So side hobbies, passion projects, art galleries, These are things that keep people sharp. And I know that you have something that you've been doing for many years. And I'd be a fool not to bring this up because it's so damn interesting. Tell us about your project, your gallery, and what you've been doing for how long, too, because it's been incredible how you've been keeping up. Give us the rundown about this and why it matters.
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of what you just said there is really important for students and young professionals to keep in mind. I have lots of discussions with people, both students and outside people, who one of the things I hear a lot is they may enjoy their work and they feel like some of their work isn't as purposeful. It's not feeding their soul the way they wanted to. And I feel like I was very fortunate. I got to work for hospitals, for a community college system, for lots of nonprofits over the years. That was work that meant something. And I was proud to be doing the work when AIDS research groups, et cetera, back in, the agency days. In 1993, and this, I wish I could tell you I had some grand plan, but this was literally one of the many weird ideas that I have always done, whether it's collecting weird things or whatever. But in 1993, I started to notice people standing on street corners holding homeless signs. And back then, most of them said, "We'll work for food." And like a lot of people, I would ignore the people I'd see on the street. I hated how that felt. And one day, for some weird reason, I thought to myself, I wonder if they would sell me their sign. And in the back of my mind, I thought one day, maybe I'll do something with the signs. But what quickly happened from that very first time and immediately, and this is 1993, so it's 30 years ago, I started to have these amazing conversations. The dynamic shifted almost immediately. And so I started to buy signs and I kept buying them. And without a real plan, there were a couple of signs early on that I painted on. And I now look back and think I ruined those signs. But I was just exploring and I kept doing it and I kept doing it. I sold my agency in 2006. I'm making a huge jump here. In 2008, I start grad school because I was afraid to go down this art road. I don't know how to tell you that other than I was afraid. I had been a creative my entire career, but art for me scared the crap out of me. And so I started grad school in an art program that was very multidisciplinary. My professors asked me, "So what do you want to make? What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I love to draw, I love to paint. Oh, and I also have this collection of homeless signs that I've been buying for the last
At that at that
six,
time, how many signs did you think you accumulated?
just a few hundred probably at this point."
Just a few hundred.
Yeah, because it
That,
went nuts very soon after this.
right. Well, so you were at grad school days and you already had a couple hundred of these signs
Oh
from
yeah,
homeless people. And
right.
and also these signs, when you buy them, you're starting conversations with these people. You told me offline that you still are in touch with some of these people. Their lives have turned around, and there's so much beauty around it. So I'll let you keep on going.
Yeah, so I have these signs. My professors are almost immediately like, you got to focus on, you got to do something with this. And being an advertising person, I knew how to sit down and do thumbnails. I filled up sketchbooks of ideas and like, what am I going to do? And I started just everything I could think of. And some of those ideas I ended up following up on. But the truth is, what I came to discover is that the signs themselves were the story. And at first, I thought I needed to insert myself into it in a hard way. And the longer I've done this work, I now realize my job's actually to get out of the way. I started to, I had a solo show in 2009. I started to develop this project thinking about this collection of signs. I started to do installations of all different kinds, experimenting with how to display the signs. And that led to a couple of TEDx talks. That led to me saying on stage one time, gee, I would love to travel across the country someday and buy signs along across the entire United States. So in 2014, me and a friend of mine started to plan this trip, beginning in Seattle, ending in New York City, to buy signs. And what that turned into was a crowdfunding campaign, which turned into the idea of making a documentary. And 2016, we finished a 62-minute documentary film, which is currently on Amazon Prime, called Signs of Humanity. Meanwhile, I've continued to do installations all across the country, in the UK. I have an exhibit up currently at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, which is about to come down. It's a group show that's around the theme of home. And so I continued to speak about the project, continued to buy signs, and continued to do exhibits. I mean, I literally bought some signs this last week. It's a never ending thing for me. I now have people that buy signs from elsewhere in the country and out of the country and send them to me. It's become a thing, and it literally is like my second job, even though I'm not really, I'm spending money on this project instead of making money, but that's really not the goal for me.
Yeah.
I've got a lovely job. I sold an ad agency. I'm good.
You're good.
But I can't tell you how fulfilling this work is. It scratches my creative itches, but it's bigger than that too. I've gotten into this world of activism and I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but that's the gist of it. The project's called We Are All Homeless. The documentary is called Signs of Humanity. We're currently working on a pitch to pitch a TV series to follow up on this and to expand on that. And I can't share some of the things about that because there are some details about it we're still working out. But
Oh yeah, like who are you pitching?
Can't talk about that yet.
You gotta love me for trying on that.
but we're literally still in the pitching, coming up with the deck, finishing out exactly our idea for the series. And I do want to touch on one other thing which is related, and that you mentioned staying in touch.
Yes.
I've got a relationship with a guy named Eddie Dunn. I bought Eddie's sign in downtown Philadelphia in 2014. Eddie at the time was a heroin addict. He had a cool sign. We were interviewed at that time by the Philly Inquirer, and so we were both quoted in an article. 2 years later, he contacted me because he saw a photo of me speaking about the project with his sign on the wall behind me. And he said, "Hey man, just wanted to let you know I'm the dude who made that sign. And I was a heroin addict when you bought it. I've been sober for almost 2 years now. And I went to jail to get sober. I'm now working. I've connected to my son and my daughter. I've got a new grandson. And long story short, Eddie and I, a couple of years after that, did a TEDx talk together on stage. Eddie and I have been on panels in Philly, in Dallas, and we continue to do stuff together. We literally talked for 2 hours last week. He is one of the most amazing, biggest hearted people that I know. And who would have ever thought that I would have a relationship with this guy whose sign I bought just completely randomly as we were making a documentary. So, and he's in our documentary. So you get to see him talking about the sign from 2014.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I could talk about this for days, but
and you do, and you should. I mean, it's a great reminder that advertising is cool and important, but there are some things bigger. And
well, hey, let me add to this, man. The skills developed in advertising, I have designed posters for this project that have been CA and Graphice. But it's because I came from this world of being trained how to design and how to conceptually craft things. It extends into this. It extends into decks when we make decks or when I do a presentation. So I want your listeners to know whatever weird ideas they have cooking in their brains, whatever side hustle is getting them excited, man, nurture that and water that and go make the world a better place.
I can't add any more to that, Willie. You said it perfectly.
Well, I bring it into my classroom. Trust me, my students, some of them might roll their eyes when I bring a new home assign to class and I pass it around. But for some of them, it really does light them up a little bit. And they start thinking about, who do I care about? How can I make the world better? And I literally give a project in my intro to creativity class that I call Design Your Own Legacy. And it is a project to get them thinking about this. So
that is incredible. I think everybody should take that class. Seriously, because a lot of times people in advertising and majors, they think that it's an easy major, you could skate by, and so that's super important.
Nobody says that at SMU. It is not known as an easy major for anybody.
Willie, how can people find out more about you, your projects? I'm sure they're going to have some follow-up questions, and they might want to transfer in to you.
So you can search my name and We Are All Homeless and see, I've had the great fortune to have lots of media attention on the project while we were making the documentary. And since then, there's a website which is badly in need of an update called weareallhomeless.org. But it's got a lot of information on it. Some of it needs to be updated. The documentary is on Amazon Prime. It's called Signs of Humanity. And yeah, it's really an easy project to find out a lot about. You can contact me. I'm an easy person to find as well, through my SMU link or We Are All Homeless, wherever. So yeah, shoot me a message. I answer them all. Maybe not right away, but I answer them all.
You'll get to them. Well, thank you so much for coming on, talking about Temerlin, about your background, how you got into advertising and started your own agency, studied art, and I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about, including your project as well. So I'll leave that for everybody to connect with you on the side. But that's all we got for this show. So Willie, one last time, I wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you. And I just want to shine some light on you. Keep doing this. I think these kinds of resources for students, I can't begin to express how valuable that is. It's going to be a link in my syllabus and all my classes. So people, this is really important to hear from people in the business who often have different opinions about what people ought to do.
And the best part, Willie, is I connect them. I'm willing to connect the students. They don't get this. Not everybody knows this right away, but I will connect them with any guest.
Yeah.
So they just have to ask. You don't have to listen to the whole episode. You just listen to the ones that you're interested in and the potential company, the potential role. So that's my little life hack, that little tip about this podcast as a resource. So I thank you. And like you said, this is my fulfillment. This is my therapy. This is my North Star, my Ikigai. This is a great book that I have here. Everybody should read this. You ever seen this?
Oh no, but I love
you already did
everything in the Japanese.
You've already hit it. It's just like combining what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at, all in the middle. And then you should do that for as long as possible, and you'll live a longer life. So you've already found that. But the Build Your Legacy class, that could be an assigned reading, 100 pages. I'm not sponsored, obviously, but just really, really beautiful book about building a legacy and not burning out and having that North Star. So that's my recommendation as well. So thank you, Willie. I'm going to cap it here, but everybody go reach out to Willie and learn more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.